A couple minutes early today. I'm going to go out and get some pants for my 7-year-old because when you are the sixth born child, you actually can run out of hand-me-downs. Like that's a thing that happens in big families where, car seats actually expire and hand-me-downs actually die eventually. So we've hit that point with my sixth born child. It's time to go get him some pants today. So change my plans because it's Saturday morning as I go live for this video talking about Day 5 of the How to Have the Talk with Your Children. Moving forward, after you've had the big talk, then what? So that's what I'm going to get into today. Real quick though, before we dive into it, it is the last day. If you're catching this live while I'm doing it, or a little bit later before the clock strikes 12 today, Saturday night, you can enter the giveaway to win your choice of any of the 7 available Moms of Many mini courses that help you in areas of big family home organization, connecting with your kids in a big family, homeschool. I've got a link in today's description so you can check out all 7 options. Those are all there to support you in a way that I wish so much I had when I was a young mom. 3 kids under 3, 5 under 5, 7 under 7, had nobody to talk to, really didn't know what I was doing, and figured out a lot of things the hard way. So those courses are from my heart, from my life, giving tips and tricks and experience and biblical encouragement, specifically focused and tailored for the big family model, which is unique. So there's that. If you want to be in the giveaway, all you got to do is get in the group if you're not already in. There again, there's a link in the description for the Big Family Moms group, and comment on any of the video posts and the action posts that drop at about 1 o'clock. You comment on those, you're in the giveaway. It's that simple. So that's that. If you're catching this later in the future while the live week is over, totally okay. You can still, get the most out of this entire 5-day challenge to talk to your kids in a way that's gracious, that's biblical, that's equipping, not only, in this one talk, but like today moving forward. So you can catch this all in the guide section in the Big Family Moms group. It's all saved there, nice and organized for you to access over and over again. So let's get into it. My parents, as I shared a little bit earlier this week, well, my mom had this singular talk with me when I was about 13, and it really was just this awkward out of nowhere talk where she was like, just make sure you do it with someone you love. That was it. That's what I remember now, 30 years later. My father never spoke to me about any of these matters, about the sexuality. It was a completely we just don't talk about it. Kind of like money and sex and politics. 3 things we never talked about that are kind of important later in life to be equipped in. And it's just looking back on my own life and taking inventory now that I'm the parent, now that I have almost 11 children, and only a couple years ago our oldest daughter was hitting puberty, and it was time. And as a homeschooling parent, and just as a parent in general, I felt a great weight of responsibility, as did my husband, as a first-generation Christian, to walk alongside her into womanhood, as he did to walk alongside our 7 sons into manhood. So we did that. One of the big things we did in equipping our children that we were not equipped by our own parents was to have the initial talk, which I talked about on day 3, went into more on day 4, how to do it with your sons. Today, I'm going to talk about how do you move forward from there. We didn't unpack everything in one conversation that you could ever talk about related to sex and sexuality and all the other applications, because you and I both know we're living in a hypersexualized culture here in the West. I'm up in Canada. We've got stuff on the political front with policies and bills pushing through that are of great concern to Christian parents, that are things that we have to contend with and think about. I'm not going to get into the political realm today. I'm going to keep it more focused on the family, between you and your children. That's another talk for another day, right? So how did we move forward once we had, myself with my daughter, my husband with her sons, around 11, 12, had a private, gracious, biblically worldview-based conversation that's been part of an ongoing, lifelong conversation. We finally connected the dots, basically, of intercourse. And for my daughter, menstruation. My sons have since learned what menstruation is. They're not completely in the dark of how God created women's bodies to work and how, eggs. My 11-year-old son heard about the eggs. He thought we laid them for a time, but he has been clued into the biology of how that works. So what do we talk about after that? Well, I'm going to get into it today. I wanted them to have, like I've said before, to fit this understanding of sex and sexuality in a biblical worldview framework, so that they can really have a picture of the good, the true, and the beautiful, what God's original design was pre-fall, so they could really understand, like, how do I make sense of the things I'm seeing in the world around me, in current events, in the news, on social media, as they gain more access to the outside world, which is appropriate. And we still do a fair amount of, guidance and supervision in that respect, but there's no keeping them, like, in a monastery like environment, as much as you want to shield your children from some of the harsh realities of the world, especially sexual expressions or sexual activities that are, some of them criminal, some of them horrifying, and some of them, like it says in the scriptures, I don't even like to talk about what some people do in the dark, because sometimes it's just mind boggling. And at the same time, I do have a genuine compassion for people who have become so wounded, so degraded, so twisted in their own soul. They're seeking some kind of satisfaction in things that, for most people would be unthinkable and are certainly in the realm of criminality. So with that being said, we just kept going with what I've talked about, the ongoing conversation. I like to think of it like bands of like pearls on a strand of like a necklace, a beautiful pearl necklace. I got this black pearl that my husband gave to me for Christmas last year, and I love it so much. And it reminds me of like the time that it takes to develop something beautiful in a relationship between parent and child that I want to go on into adulthood, right? I can't think of anything either more sad or more beautiful than to have a lifelong good relationship with your own children, right? I mean, that's what we all want as parents, is to walk alongside them, launch them into their adult lives, and to know on some level that for all that we screwed up, for all that we failed and fell short, that we didn't totally blow it. So in the area of preparing them for understanding sex, sexuality, themselves, the world, we just kept going with the conversation. And some of the conversations specifically that we had to touch on, because they were going to find out, were specifically some of the very twisted, sad, broken expressions of sex. So without getting maybe too hyper descriptive, because this is going to be in the public realm, YouTube and stuff, I don't want to get super flagged. There are some key words that I guess bots will just boom, delete your video. But I'm going to be real with you, because I want to equip you as well. We talked about how sex can be used to hurt, and just organic conversations where they came up. We didn't like calendar plan them, but it's just like God guides when those conversations, it's time to happen, especially if you've intentioned in your heart as a parent, be like, I am going to get to the front of the line. I'm going to be the one to tell you first about some hard words to hear, but you need to hear them because you need to know, and you're old enough now, 12 plus, to hear what it means when someone violates someone sexually, to know the actual word. I'm not going to say it. You know what I'm talking about, because YouTube will instantly flag it. And we talked about how that is because of sinful human nature. It's wrong. It's criminal. What would you do if someone shared that with you, or shared that they were, had experienced that? Come and talk to a trusted parent. We'll guide you through that. What to do if you feel uncomfortable with someone, around you, talking to you, touching you. Again, this is just kind of the next level of the body boundaries safety talk that we've had when they were younger. And now it's time to give it a little bit more meat, right? A little bit more understanding of what that could look like. And now that they've had the initial sex talk, they're like, oh, right. That's a big deal. That's wrong. That's bad. We talked about how it can happen too hurtful, too young, right? That it's not okay in family, and why, referencing back to the Bible. We talked about how it can be used selfishly for self-pleasure alone. It can become very addictive. We did talk about pornography. We did talk about masturbation. Gave our take on that. And if you'd like to know more, feel free to, connect with me privately in the group. I'm happy to share if it's something you'd like to talk about for a little more equipping. Just want to bounce your ideas off me and hear kind of where we come from on that. We talked about dating. Of course, we talked about that for years, and we don't see it as child's play at all. We see the way the world, by and large, does dating. It's very selfish, very, using each other to scratch an itch, to fill a void. And as compassionate as I am towards that, it's very poor preparation for marriage. It's like trying people on like pants. And of course, it's a breeding ground for all kinds of sexual exploration. Let's just be real. Most people, not all, of course, there's exceptions to this rule, but most people are just using it as like, cheap access, right? How to get the milk without buying the cow, basically. So we felt that that was another moving forward conversation as they came into the young adult years and actually became aware of guys and girls and thinking about their futures a little bit more. Of course, we had to talk about LGBTQ. There's no avoiding it in today's day and time. So again, an ongoing conversation. We didn't have that one shot. That's ongoing. Now that my kids are like reading the newspaper more, we have a subscription to the Epic Times, which I highly recommend. In fact, I'll put a link below after this video. Really great newspaper, not like all the way left, not all the way right. They just present more of the facts, and it helps our kids engage with the world, but in a way that's not really shoving agenda down their throat. So we can talk about, things I'm talking about right now, but be able to talk about them not from one just political view, not just from one perspective. So that's been really helpful to engage with current events as it relates to these ongoing conversations. We've also talked about consequences like unplanned pregnancy, STDs. That's not the singular reason why we would recommend chastity until marriage, but that is a reality. That is a consequence. That's probably the only reason why I think most people talk about birth control is to avoid pregnancy or STDs, though, of course, birth control doesn't protect you really from STDs. But we had to talk about it because they're going to hear about it. I was with my sons at the doctor's office a couple months ago, and there was like a cookie jar of condoms right there in the camera. It's like, it had a sign, help yourself, right? And that's going to happen. So I gave them some perspective because they'd never even seen a condom. When I was in grade 9 in health class, we actually did a demo of putting a condom on a banana. Like, thanks. That was awkward with all the guys and girls in the class giggling and laughing. They told us to bring a banana to school. It was mortifying. I was like, oh my gosh. Anyway, but who knows where the grade 9s are now, right? I'm sure you could tell me some horror stories if you know someone, or maybe even your own kids are in high school now, right? It's really, things have changed since I was in grade 9 in high school. So they needed equipping. We had these conversations. And lastly, of course, we had to talk about abortion, right? We had to talk about that and not be like, I can't talk about this. It's just too harsh. They're going to find out. And we wanted to frame it within a biblical worldview without harshly condemning people, but also being honest about what it is, okay? What God says about it scripturally, so they could have a scriptural foundation. How we have compassion for people who are engaging in these choices, these activities. At the same time, we don't condone it either. So there's that, right? That's a more mature way of living in the world, but not being of the world. And we would always bring things back to God's word. Always, speaking the truth in love with grace towards other people, but without minimizing the seriousness of what we were talking about at all, and how it has not only real world consequences, but serious spiritual consequences. So this is such a great opportunity to impress upon your children the gospel, the need for repentance and forgiveness, because that's the heart of all this sexual brokenness and perversion that we see in the world. Are people who are just like sinners, like lost by, and just like me, like I remember I was only saved at 21. Most of these things that I've listed off been involved in some way, shape, or form. So I don't stand with this high and mighty, holier than thou attitude. But at the same time, I recognize that these are not God's ways. They have serious temporary consequences here and now, and they also have eternal consequences. So it's an honor and a privilege to be able to disciple and train your own children. And I thought, because I went to missionary college, I was like, I'm going to go and be a missionary. And then God was like, how about you disciple and train your own children? And I was like, well, that doesn't count, but that's a whole other talk for another day, because that's such a low view of motherhood. I was like, no, I have to do it for them, not my kids. I don't know why kids didn't count for some reason as a mission field. Anyway, these are the conversations we've had, and we continue to have now that my oldest is 16, twins are 14, I'm starting to have more young adults than little kids. And I'm 43, I'm expecting baby number 11 in 7 weeks. Eventually my womb will close, that season will come to an end. And this is happening. These conversations have to happen because time is not my friend, right? It is for none of us. The children are growing. So I want to encourage you that if you're struggling with this, like, Tara, I don't really feel comfortable talking about sex or sexuality or all the things you just listed off that are really important, heavier conversations. It could be that there's still some stuff inside of you, like I talked about earlier this week, with our own baggage and hurt and brokenness, even trauma from the past, because we've all got a story, don't we, that would just break your heart. I haven't met a single person who doesn't have a story that'll break your heart, even homeschoolers, right? And you could stay bitter or you could get better. So I want to encourage you. I have a course called the Moms of Many course. Number 1, it's my first course I did, because to me, it's the core. And it is overcoming the fear of having many children. And I deal with fear in general, and specifically the fear of having, like, scared of having kids, scared of embracing the blessing of children, scared of becoming a mom. Overcoming those fears for me by God's grace has allowed me to have the children I have today, to welcome them with joy and trust, and also to be able to even talk to them like this, because I had such a low view of motherhood. I really did. I thought it was being a cow. I thought it was a sentence. I thought it was like, just demeaning to women, and that I would lose myself, lose my life, lose my purpose and worth. And then, how do you want to talk to your kids if you kind of basically resent them deep down and God, right? So that's there. If you think that that would be a blessing to you, that's resonating with you right now, I've got it linked in today's video. So please feel free to check that out. It's there to help you, come alongside you in a way I did not have when I was in the thick of it, screaming and crying out and running from God, that I was so scared at the bottom of it all. So that's there to help you. I am so grateful that we have tracked together for this challenge. I want to remind you about the giveaway. Make sure you comment in the video, comment in the post, because you would get to choose your own course if you're the winner. So all you're going to just comment, and then any of those courses are there to bless you, whether it's overcoming fear of having a big family or getting organized, wherever you're at in your motherhood journey, that's there to bless you. So thank you so much for meeting with me. God bless you. And, oh, right, it's probably already dropped in the group. I have a bonus video I did an interview with Eden and Judah, two of my oldest children, of them giving their recollections and their thoughts and advice on how to have the talk. So that was a really fun conversation, just short and sweet, 15 minutes long. Feel free to check that out as well. That was hilarious and also very insightful. So I'll sign off. Have a great day. God bless you. I'll see you in the group.